This is getting out of hand, and I'm working on a video that is so much more serious than this and much more personal than this. But I'm going to address this first because people need to get out of my face about it. I made 3 videos on Markiplier. And the third one that I put up, I didn't even want to. I just kind of threw it up because I was just so tired of talking about him. And I'll explain why in a little bit. But I even think that I said it in the third video that I was just like, oh, whatever, I'll just put this up. And the whole internet went on fire because of it. So, since everybody and their mother has something to say about it, you forced my hand to have to talk about this issue because I honestly didn't want to address him anymore. It's funny how so many people were saying, oh, stop talking about him. But because of all the crap and all the lies and all the straw mans that people were giving, you're giving me no choice but to actually explain myself as to why exactly I even made the 3 videos in the first place. So I'm going to start off with that. Why I even made them in the first place. People are saying, oh, you just, scour trending topics to talk about things. I really don't. Most of the videos that I've made is from friends or viewers sending me stuff to react to. That's pretty much it. I think I've said it several times where I'm like, my friend sent me this video because that's what happens. I really don't check YouTube like that. As for the Markiplier stuff, it's not that it's trending. If you notice, I think every video that I made was right after he put those videos up. At least 2 of them were. And why is that? Why is it that as soon as he put a video up, I was able to comment on it immediately after? The coronavirus one, I commented on it the night that he put it up. Maybe it's because I was subscribed to Markiplier. Yeah, it's common sense. I was subscribed to him. It's not that I was just waiting for him to put videos up to talk about him. I was just naturally subscribed to him because I played his videos in the background while I worked on stuff. Like if I was drawing or doing this or that, I'll just have the video there. And over time, I just got sick of hearing him because even though he's a gamer, he puts up these PSAs every now and then where he wants to address serious things, but he makes the topics worse when he addresses them. And I've given examples of that before. One of them being when he told everyone during the whole crisis of YouTube's system being broken, he put up a video trying to explain why, and he did a pretty good job for the most part. He left out more of the serious things, but he explained some of the mechanics and some of the technical issues. And at the end of it, he told everyone that they shouldn't freak out about it. It doesn't matter if people are losing their channels unjustifiably. It doesn't matter if people are having to deal with all these, monetary issues and how history channels aren't making a lot of money on YouTube because history is a sensitive topic and all these problems that YouTube had. They've been fixing it now, but they had all these issues at the time where people's lives were miserable. And he's just saying, no, just, try not to talk about the moral aspects of it all. Just talk about the technical issues.
So anyway, let me know down in the comments if you've seen other issues with the platform, if you've seen other issues on YouTube. Try to keep it not so much about the morals of it and try to keep it down to the technical issues that are happening right now. We've got technical problems that need technical answers.
But the problem that he left out is that there's a lot of political things going on with YouTube, a lot of problems that have to do with politics.
They want control. They want your attention. They want your time. They literally have psychologists on site that study these things and psychological behaviors. They want you to spend as much time on their platform as possible. Google wants to try to corner every single market. Just look at all the science, guys. Implementing the clunky Google Plus social feed to compete with Facebook, or perhaps implementing their revolutionary new stories to compete with Snapchat and Instagram, which was a blatant ripoff, which Instagram ripped off Snap. So it's just ripping off, everyone's ripping off. Adding premium to compete with Netflix, and now they're talking about competing with TikTok. And also, they had YouTube Gaming because they're trying to compete with Twitch. Their main service is shafting creators, yet they're busy, dabbling and all and taking little bits of everybody else because all they give a fuck about is getting more. And just getting by enough so that their current users aren't too pissed off. And they figure, well, it's just a drop in the bucket if a few creators chime off, but there's no alternative. There's nothing they can do. Also, we don't tell them these things are going on and it's just below the surface. Guys, Google knows everything. You could say it's conspiracy theory, you could say it's conjecture, speculation, whatever, but just look at all the signs. They are building Big Brother. Yeah, it sounds like stuff out of a sci-fi movie, but look at all the signs, my friends. They have all of our email communications through Gmail. They have all of our texts through Google Assistants and Google Phones. They have our locations with Google Maps. They have all of our videos and three-dimensional likeness and voice with AI and Google Vision on YouTube that knows emotion and context through still images. They know who I am, they know what kind of brand of car it is, they have very complex algorithms that read every frame of every video. They even have our fucking DNA through 23andMe. This is world domination. They control all the data. Now let's scale this 5 years from now. Let me know where we're at, guys. Lest we forget the big elephant in the room, which is Google search. How many things have you guys asked? Not to mention, you're probably watching this on Google Chrome, your web browser, and we'll use it to their advantage when the time comes. This is bigger than just an entertainment platform. The implications of all of this are we won't see for a while until it's probably too late. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
If you look at any big social media website, when it makes big changes, most of it is a political thing. So if you're going to spend time addressing why a website is changing, you have to address some controversial stuff because it tends to involve politics when it's a big company. That's just the fact of the matter. I'm just going to juxtapose this clip of Markiplier with a bunch of other clips so that you can fully understand how insulting this is. Because this is what happens if you were to talk about the morals of what Google has done to YouTube.
So anyway, let me know down in the comments if you've seen other issues with the platform, if you've seen other issues on YouTube.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Guys, back to YouTube. Their copyright system's ruthless. Full-on flagging complete channels, terminating channels, removing all the revenue. David Dobrik gets 250 million views a month. Good for him. But he only makes $3,000. He makes less than the average household. I'm a massive creator being left in the dark. Just like all the other massive creators, pretty much all the creators.
Try to keep it not so much about the morals of it and try to keep it down to the technical issues that are happening right now.
Once again, I reiterate, I never ever once felt valued by the platform. No communication whatsoever. Cookie cutter awards.
It's the fact that YouTube hides and restricts our reach for our viewers. They pick and choose who the rules apply to. The rules apply to some people and the rules do not apply to other people. YouTube decides. There's no rules.
Hell, even dramatized violence for comedy, skits, or animation will result in no monetization or decrease monetization, which they might not even tell you about. It still might show up green and they'll still suppress your viewership and get you lower CPMs. How are you supposed to do anything?
Try to keep it not so much about the morals of it and try to keep it down to the technical issues that are happening right now. This is my community that we're talking about. These are people that have supported me for years. I can't have this. This can't happen. This just can't happen. We've got technical problems that need technical answers. And I get that. You need some automated systems. But when they're this bad, when it's causing this big of a problem, and it's not just that it's causing a problem technologically speaking, this is people's livelihoods. This is their entire account. What are they going to explain to their boss? Oh, sorry, I can't get into my Google account. I was at a Markiplier live stream.
Mark, most issues aren't technical. An issue is only technical when it's an accident. Once a problem that's been caused is deliberate, it's no longer a mistake, and you have to discuss the morals of the intent behind those actions in order to fix it. And what's so ironic is that his situation is more technical than any of the other concerns the people have been bringing up about YouTube. The issue he's having is purely an accident from YouTube. They didn't mean to do this with live streaming. It would ruin their entire website if this were to continue. However, the lack of support and transparency when talking to the YouTube employees, that is and has always been intentional. So because this was a mistake, Markiplier deserves the least amount of sympathy for being angry according to his own standards of technical issues and staying calm.
Try to keep it not so much about the morals of it and try to keep it down to the technical issues that are happening right now.
And yet, he's going to get the most out of everyone who's been affected by YouTube. Not only the most amount of sympathy from the employees, but the most amount of sympathy from viewers as well, because that's how biased people are. But back to my little compilation.
Dramatized violence in animation, video game violence, skits. How are you supposed to tell any kind of story with a conflict without doing these things? Like, what the hell are we supposed to do then, YouTube? Am I supposed to do Super Happy Cardboard Box Family?
I don't know why YouTube is trying to gentrify the fucking internet. The whole reason YouTube got popular in the first place was because it was a place you can go to find raw, real people who gave their opinions unedited. Now YouTube is just filled with bland-ass, boring, inoffensive personalities. It's the fucking Disney Channel of the internet.
If you think YouTube's going mainstream now, just wait till you see what happens in the coming months and the coming years. It's only gonna get worse for creators. And just the sheer fact that I made $350 off 35 hours of work, that's like me working for $10 an hour. I could go work at McDonald's and make more than that when I'm entertaining 200,000 people.
Try to keep it down to the technical issues that are happening right now.
Matt Pat, behind Game Theory, is one of the first people to talk out about this. Roll the clip.
Now you're just contending with the less talked about YouTube content ratings system.
Don't you think all this information should be communicated to us? Under the hood ratings, why we're being demonetized, no access to trending. It seemed almost personal, which I wouldn't put it past YouTube, as they are notorious for crushing potential competition.
I thought I was remembering something from some kind of
Oh no, you weren't
summit.
there.
No.
If you were there, it would have been a surprise to me.
I tuned in. All the Alexas, I'm listening.
No, it was like it
It's
was a disagreement with about a sponsor I had, and they were like, "We see it as a direct threat," and I was like, "I don't fucking care." I was like, "You're demonetizing all my videos."
Good. Speak your truth. Live your truth, man.
But then the entire time I'm like, "Fuck!" And Robert Kinsel's in this room, and I'm trying to get a public interview with this guy.
Oh man.
Fuck! And then he did one with Casey Neistat. It was probably the smarter move. It was probably the better move for him.
That example with Philip DeFranco was blatant blackmail. They refused to do the interview with him because he was just doing a branded deal for a competitor. Google has ultimate control. I don't think we should continue to give these big tech companies the leverage. They can suppress our reach and connection to audience at any time. They've made this very clear.
Try to keep it not so much about the morals of it and try to keep it down to the technical issues that are happening right now.
Creators need to rise up, and they just need to know that all this is happening. And it needs to be hit over the head, because I want everyone to stop living in fear and denial that YouTube isn't acting this way or hasn't been behaving this way. It's because we feel we have no alternative. I think people are afraid to speak out against the hand that feeds them.
And I know. I just a few days ago, I was singing YouTube's praises because I was so happy about the fact that they supported my show.
But you know this is wrong.
I know that making this call out is probably going to affect my chances to do another one. But this is so problematic that I have to.
And all of this is criticism in hopes that you'll change these things for the better, even though I know you won't. And despite what you guys say you're doing, you're not doing it. And we just want some fucking communication for once, some transparency, and to feel like we're valued.
And he left that out and then told people, don't talk about the morals of it, just talk about the technical aspects. However, when the problems of YouTube affected him personally...
And I'm a firm believer that panic serves no purpose.
Which isn't true.
I can't have this. This can't happen. This just can't happen. In showing you this, I know this is going to piss you off just as much because just seeing this and how it's affecting people is making me so mad that I am losing my ability to give anybody the benefit of the doubt here.
He's telling everyone to stay calm and don't freak out. You know, it's like, oh my God, just be calm about it. But once it personally affects him, he wasn't calm. He was freaking out. Now, the problem with all of this is that when people are actually angry and when they have excitement over something, even if it's in a negative way, powerful people tend to listen more because they honestly don't care unless something personally affects them. You know, they've done studies about this, how the richer someone is, the more apathetic they are to other people's issues, which explains why he's more apathetic to their issues, but more importantly, how CEOs and people who are in charge of these companies don't really care if the problem is affecting anyone if they don't voice their concerns. So when he's telling everyone in all these situations to just not, just relax and don't freak out about it, this is what you call toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is something that is plaguing the world right now. Most of the problems that we have is due to toxic positivity. I already did a video where I explained how optimism breeds sociopathy. I think I've done a couple of them. I'll post them here if you actually want to see it. But toxic positivity is a way of thinking where you have a positive bias, an optimistic bias, and it may seem in the short term like the right thing to do, but it holds us back in the long term from growing. If you look at any big situation that's ever happened in the world, big changes, like civil rights movement and things like that, it was when people were aggressive when things actually changed. You look at all these shows where people have these positive protests and everyone's high-fiving and shaking hands and happy, and they're just like, come on, join the protest, and things work out. But that's not how history has been. You have to be aggressive to get people to actually change their mind on something, because you're standing up against the wealthy and the powerful. Unless you give them a reason to actually change, they're not going to change because they're not empathetic to your issues. Going back to that study again. So that's why when I see a rich millionaire with 25 million subscribers telling me to stay calm when he honestly doesn't really have that many problems, it's infuriating because he's not actually considering what regular people are going through. Okay, so people are going to take this out of context, so just to explain, I understand that everyone has hard times. Obviously, it's common sense. But being rich and powerful gives you privileges and advantages when you're going through the same things that poor people go through. So, you know, people act like poor people don't have issues. And they act like being poor doesn't make it harder to deal with those issues. So it makes those hardships easier to deal with when you're someone like Markiplier, regardless of the situation. If you put him in the same situation as a poor person, on average, he's going to have an easier time dealing with it than they will. And that's just a fact. If you think that he's a regular person, he's not. I've had people like say to me like, what, you think that he's made $1 million? Like, people really think that he's like a normal person just because he wears shirts. I'll get back to his clothes later because I actually have something to say about that that's not like some sort of fashion thing or something. But, you know, that's the main issue that I have with how he addresses his PSAs. Telling people to stay calm, always saying all these empty platitudes. That's another problem. He talks about these empty platitudes all of the time. The biggest example that's the most recent is everything that happened with George Floyd. If you watch his video, he spends 4 minutes talking about, oh, we're gonna get through this, you know, everything's okay, and, you know, racism is bad. I'm just gonna show you some of the most important points that he made. This actually turned out to be a really huge tangent, so just get prepared for like the gigantic self-insert that's about to happen.
The circumstances of his arrest are irrelevant. A man is dead. And this sort of situation disproportionately affects a certain percentage of the population. George Floyd was an African-American man, and there's a long, storied history of African-American men and women being murdered or abused while being placed under arrest. And I think, I hate the term I think, the last thing I want to do is to try to inject my opinion into a situation that neither deserves it or needs it.
This is the same guy that said that there are people out there who need him. His fans, his viewers. He knows that there's countless people out there who are counting on him.
He treats it as a family of sorts that he must continuously extend emotional support to, as well as a tool to extend similar support to others on a much wider scale.
I know there's people that need me. And I want to be there for them so badly. I do. I want to bear the burden for them. I would bear it.
And he wants to help them all. He cried his eyes out saying it. And yet here he is saying, nah, they don't need my opinion, nor do they deserve it. What? I'm pretty sure that they need it. You're an influencer with 25 million subscribers. When Logan Paul said,
and if you are an influencer or a celebrity friend of mine, I hope you are using your platform to continue to spread the message of solidarity and unity.
He didn't mean a bunch of people to make a neutral stance or a stance with a bunch of platitudes that is the most generic statement on racism that I've ever heard. He was very specific about what you're supposed to do.
Condemn those who feign superiority because of the color of their skin. Friends, hold friends accountable. Hold your family accountable. Hold yourself accountable. And most importantly, we must hold our authorities accountable. Police officers, politicians, policymakers. As Killer Mike said, bully the politicians at the voting booth. Make your voice heard. Attend a protest. Speak up against injustice.
This is a problem that is deeply rooted in our government and in our communities and in the systems that are supposed to help our fellow man. And it is a problem that needs to be rooted out at every turn. In this case, there is very little gray area to debate about. A man is dead as a result of police brutality, and there was no justice in his death. And this happens over and over and over again, and it's very easy to remove yourself.
This is projection because he is distancing himself from the controversy of this issue. He's very vague. He avoids certain words that are more than appropriate to use. This needs to be rooted out. What needs to be rooted out? And how? Any suggestions? Any research that you've done to show that you cared?
We need to fight these injustices at every turn, because prejudice and injustice and racism runs very deep, and its roots are very thick. And if you don't cut it out, and if you don't stop it at every turn, it will always come back. And I think that the discontent is a result of that anger, of the deep-seated anger, of continually and repeatedly being ignored.
And the difference between Logan Paul and Markiplier is that Logan Paul actually admits that he didn't do enough.
And I'm embarrassed that it's taken me 25 years to realize this. It is not enough to be not racist. You have to be anti-racist.
Yes.
He's being humble about it, whereas Markiplier is speaking as if he's always been speaking out on these issues and wasn't a part of the problem. And even what he's saying now isn't nearly enough. Logan proves that. And I'm not grasping at straws. I just honestly think that this is too nuanced for the average optimistic and positive viewer. And I'm not telling people to unsubscribe to him over this. I'm just saying why I have issues with him personally and why he is the perfect example of many issues that most people have. It's not just him, it's a lot of people who think this way. And that's why a lot of people get offended by what I have to say, because they take it personally. You know, it personally applies to them in a lot of instances, and they don't want to face that.
I hope that we can live in a world where racism and prejudice are in the past, but the realist in me knows that we need to fight it at every turn, and we need to confront it, and we need to challenge it, and we need to defeat it whenever it rises up. In the description, I'm going to leave a link to a charity, an organization called Campaign Zero. They are dedicated to ending police violence in America, or at the very least, ensure that justice is always served when it is due. I will be making a contribution to this charity, and I encourage you to do the same or contribute to many of the other causes that people are linking on social media, on Twitter, on various other sites, or other YouTube videos. There are many ways that you can help, even at the most basic of just letting people know that this is not okay, that we do not stand for this, making your voice heard.
We can't enjoy peace and prosperity if we don't confront the problems that are plaguing our lives currently. And you aren't doing that. I'm tired of these rich YouTubers with all of the privilege in the world pretending as if they're speaking out on something that's important and detrimental to society when they're just saying practically nothing. But now they can go ahead and say, I said something, I did something. Money can't fix the world's problems. It can do a lot, but it can't do everything. All that money fixes for the most part are surface level issues. It doesn't fix the root cause of a problem. The rich and powerful have all of the access in the world to change the systems that are in place.
Acknowledge and weaponize your privilege. I believe we're going to a protest today. You can bet your fucking ass I'll be in the front line.
But instead of doing that, they would rather donate some of their money away because in their mind, that's doing enough. And when doing this, instead of actually speaking up and being specific and detailed, there's no risk involved. And that's the cost of convenience. I just did a video about the mindset of people who compromise being an actual realist, growing and changing for convenience. Not only because you have physical access to things that the average person and poor people don't have, but you influence millions. You can influence them to do the things that we need to do in order to grow as a human race. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to have controversial conversations. You're not supposed to tiptoe around the issue. Charity makes us idle. And I know that people are going to take that out of context. They're going to say, oh, you're saying that he shouldn't donate to charity. You're saying that donating to charity is a bad thing, when that's obviously not what I'm saying. Charity is helpful and it is a good thing. But the problem is that charity has now become a crutch, which is what's making us idle in terms of evolution and growth. Charity has now become a replacement for taking action. So when people donate, they're like, I did my job. I gave money. That should be enough. But you have to have conversations. You have to discuss things and share controversial opinions. And a lot of these big changes do have to come from people who are influential, whether you're influential in terms of fame, fortune, being iconic, or powerful. Regardless of what influence you have, the people who are influential have the most access in the world to the things that can help people who are poor and suffering. So when you just donate to charity, say a few empty platitudes, and then sit at home and think, oh, I did my job, let me go play some video games, like that's not enough. And that's why the way I feel a lot of times is if people are going to dip their toe into controversy, then either stick your neck out for somebody or don't bother at all. Just stay in your lane. Because at this point now you're trying to get the benefit for sticking up for someone while not doing it at all. And I'm not telling people to unsubscribe to him over that. Like, I don't know why people always assume. Like, people just keep trying to twist my words. It's so dumb. I'm not telling people to unsubscribe to him. I'm just telling you the issues that I have with him. Because people believe that the rich, the famous, the powerful, and the iconic will fix our problems. But many of the rich and powerful and so on are the ones that put these problems in place in the first place. And the only people with a status to be able to reach enough people to fix these issues are the people in that very class. But you care more about your career than speaking out for Black people. So it's like, why even bother speaking out in the first place? All right, tangent's over. So back to whatever it was that I was saying. But everybody wants to have the halo effect with Markiplier, where they're looking at him through rose-tinted glasses and they give him a free pass on everything. So being subscribed to him and seeing him do these PSAs all the time, I eventually just got sick of it because he honestly pissed me off when he made that whole video about how YouTube is broken and telling everybody, oh, you need to be calm. Y'all need to be calm. Just talk about the technical aspect. I was mad when he did that. So when I finally saw him freaking out over the same issue because it personally affected him, that's when I made a video on it. That was when. Because, you know, I've dealt with stuff from YouTube and I've seen people deal with so much worse than I've had to deal with from YouTube. And to see him finally doing the very thing he told people not to do, I pointed out that it's hypocritical because he should stop doing it. That doesn't mean that you need to unsubscribe to him. It just means that he needs to stop doing that. Everything else he's doing is okay except for this stupid PSA crap. Because he's actually hurting situations more than he's helping. Which brings me to my second issue that I said that I had with him, which was the coronavirus video. That was the last straw for me. So I made a video about how he was addressing the pandemic when it first hit. And people want to tell me that I'm spreading misinformation. They pretty much never explain how. Like with the coronavirus video, they were like, you said misinformation too. Let me address the only thing that I misinformed in that virus video. There's a part in the video where I show that scientists have pulled out ice cores, 2 ice cores from the Arctic. When I showed that clip, I ended up talking to somebody who's a doctor and they were explaining to me, this is their explanation of it. I still don't know for sure if this is the case because it's kind of a hard thing for me to research, to look up, because other things pop up when you use this terminology. But he said in med school, when they say that we recognize a virus, it means that our body is going to respond to it. So he was saying that the majority of those viruses won't affect us. So I technically got some of it wrong, but the main point still completely stood, and that's why I didn't really correct it. And the main point is that that's an entire glacier. And even though I said, oh, 28 or 20 something of the viruses affect us, imagine the entire glacier. Okay, so the numbers are different. If 4 of those viruses can affect us, imagine how many viruses are in that entire glacier. An ice core is very small in comparison to a glacier. And then there's several glaciers. So when I said talk about a plague, I still mean that. That's pretty serious. My friend was saying, you think that we were just gonna all drown to death, but we might actually all get sick and miserably ill before we die. So that was the only thing that I misinformed on the coronavirus video. No one pointed that out. They just said, you misinformed the whole video. What are you talking about? Everything else I said was accurate. I showed theories that people had on the viruses. I showed sources and everything. However, when Markiplier talked about the coronavirus video, all the things that he got wrong, okay? Now you know what I got wrong. The stuff that he got wrong, he told millions of people to go to the grocery store and stock up. Think about what that means, because he clearly didn't think it through when he said it. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that means that when I tell people to stressfully consider the consequences of their actions and who it affects when they decide to stock up on food, I am producing a net positive by saying something that's negative. But with Markiplier, when he's calmly advising people to stay calm and stock up, his good intentions are leading us to death, because regardless of how calm you are, it doesn't change the fact that stocking up is in fact panic buying. And panic buying is a selfish, privileged, and apathetic thing to do. But that's only the start of how horrible his advice was. He's telling millions of people to go to the store. Who's going to get access to the store first? People with cars. People who have time to go to the store right now. The most privileged people in this situation. Even if you're poor, in this situation, you're privileged because you can go to the store and stock up. If you got money to stock up, if you have access to the store to stock up, you are a privileged person. I'm pretty sure Markiplier is Korean. People are asking about that in the comments. In Asian countries, you're shamed for doing that. That's something that I learned during this whole pandemic. In Asian countries, if you go to the store and you stock up, you're shamed for it because you're supposed to leave stuff for everyone else. You're not supposed to just care about yourself. It's interesting how different and how selfish American culture is because Americans don't really have a sense of community, you know, on a national scale since there are so many cultures and everyone's poor. So when you have a lack of community while being poor and suffering, people tend to be very selfish minded and, you know, very self-centered. So when he's telling these masses of people to go to the store and buy up everything, you're making it harder for people who actually need the food, who actually don't have a lot of money to get those things. And people on top of it going to the store on the first day were more likely to get sick because think about it. Did you see the crowds? Like it was raining a lot around the country. There were people standing outside in the rain. There's people going into the stores. They're all wet. The germs are all around. They're touching everything because when you go to the grocery store, you're touching on all the foods, all the bags, the boxes. People weren't wearing masks at the time, even though we were late to quarantine. So why do you think we have so many deaths? It's because not only did we take forever to self-quarantine, but then on top of it, everybody went out and was touching the same things, just spreading the virus around. So essentially, whether you want to take this out of context or not, or whether you want to give him the benefit of the doubt or not, objectively, he sent people to die. That's a very serious thing. This is what I'm saying when I say, you know, he needs to take more responsibility for the things that he says because he has 25 million subscribers. If everyone's going to the store and infecting each other, you know, there are older people, there's younger people, immunodeficient people going to the stores, getting sick and dying. That is not hyperbole. That is not a fictional scenario. He sent people to die. It's like everybody's getting on my case for poorly wording something that was right. Meanwhile, he poorly words something that gets people killed and everybody gives him the benefit of the doubt for it. And he didn't think about the consequences of those actions. Even when the information came out and they said people were not supposed to go to the stores and stock up, he didn't care. He sent people to die. And, you know, no one's angry about that. I'm going to get into what everyone's angry about, but nobody's angry about that. Nobody's angry about the fact that I sat there and I read for 2 or 3 hours his comments on that video. And I just kept seeing all these comments from people saying, Markiplier, I'm homeless. I was sharing the comments in the video and I was honestly on the verge of tears. I've never been on the verge of tears in a video before, but I was actually on the verge of tears and I think you can hear it in my voice. If you read his comment section, it really breaks my heart. And people don't understand that. It honestly breaks my heart because when you read his comment section, the people who are homeless, the people who are getting fired, the people who have to go to work even, the people who still have to go to work, they're not happy. They're not calm. They're like, I'm freaking out. And he's not going to talk about that. He's not going to try to inform you or help you on anything. He just says, that's not my business. But if he knew somebody who needed some information on that, if he knew someone personally, then he'd talk about it because he's apathetic. And it was honestly just depressing because it was just the most apathetic thing that I've ever seen. And it's all done under the blanket of toxic positivity. Because in the short term, you think it's a positive thing to say, everything's gonna be fine. Everyone be calm. We're all gonna get through this. You know, be calm. Go stock up on food. He's saying it all in a positive way, but he's saying the worst thing. And people don't recognize that because it sounds nice and people act on emotion most of the time. People think based on their emotions instead of critically thinking about issues. So while he sounds positive, he's saying the worst thing imaginable. And so there were a lot of people who understood where I came from, but there were a ton of people who wanted to take it out of context. And that's always going to happen. But that video didn't blow up the way that this third one is blowing up because I did what I normally do and I thoroughly went through all the points that I wanted to make. However, as I already said, I was on the verge of tears in that video. I was honestly honestly very depressed after watching that, and that was the day that I unsubscribed to him because, I mean, it's like I've said before, a ton of people do the stuff that he does, so I don't just unsubscribe to everybody who, you know, does stuff that gets on my nerves. I hate people, so most people get on my nerves. But at that point, and you know, he donates to charity, so I was just like, I mean, I don't think it's too bad of a thing. But at that point, I just couldn't stand listening to his voice anymore. So I personally, just me, unsubscribed because I've done that with people before. You know, when I Hate Everything said that adults have the right to make fun of children and they just need to put up with it, that was the day I unsubscribed to him. I used to be subscribed to him and actually had more respect for him than most people in the commentary community at the time. But then he started putting out some edgy videos and I was like, oh God, you're just like everybody else. I just didn't like him. I didn't want to hear his voice, so I took a break. And if I go back, then I go back. If I don't, then I don't. People are allowed to take breaks as well. So if anyone does unsubscribe, it doesn't mean that they should never resubscribe. It's all up to you, but I'm not saying that people need to massively unsubscribe to the guy. I've never said that. On the contrary, I've actually said the opposite. I've literally told people, if you want to keep watching him, go ahead. Now, I personally can't stand it when people say the whole empty, please keep supporting this person who I think is horrible and manipulative. I'm not about to beg you to support Markiplier. It's your choice. That most YouTubers are like this, so massively unsubscribing from him wouldn't fix anything. If you actually want to make these situations better, just call people out. He clearly cares about what people think of him. So if enough people came out when he made his little PSAs and said, hey, either actually share an opinion or stop talking about it, you know, stick your neck out there for people or just don't even bother, I'm sure he would stop doing this shit. Because again, what he's saying is hurting the situation. It's not helping. It is hurting or it's enabling. That's it. That's all that he's been doing when he says this stuff. So if you want anything to change, you could do that. Do I need people to do that? No, I honestly don't care either way. As I've said before, I hate the human race and expect no real progress from it. We're literally on the brink of wiping ourselves out. I'm just sharing my thoughts on the situation, just like everyone else whenever they have an opinion. But with that tangent aside that I just went on, going back to when I unsubscribed to him, I just got sick and tired of hearing his voice. You know, I could talk about that all day, but that video really just, like, I just couldn't stand him for that. And so I unsubscribed at that point. But I was in the middle of making a different video on him. Oh, and I forgot to mention one more thing before I get into the next video. In his coronavirus video, he also talked about, he said the most pretentious thing. He's like,
I am still going to be making videos because you guys are going to need something to watch while you're tucked away from the world.
Like, this is why people don't think that he's as rich as he is. Like, he says things like that as if he's doing you a favor by playing games. It's just, oh, it's just so, oh my God. But he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna play games for you. It's like, oh gee. Anyway, so that was another thing where I was just like, you need to get over yourself. You know, like seriously, get over yourself. When people say he has an ego in real life, I believe it. Because he's displaying it publicly. People are usually worse in private than they are in public, especially when they do the positive stuff. You know, if people are constantly displaying this perfect persona, this positive persona, they're usually 10 times worse in private. Because people don't like showing you their true selves, because everybody gives the reaction that I get. You know, mass dislikes, everybody's saying, oh, screw you, I hate you, don't share your opinions, I hate you. It's funny how people don't realize that if they knew what their friends, family, and neighbors were truly thinking, they wouldn't be able to stand them either because of our collective lack of tolerance for controversy. So I believe he has a big ego, and anyone, I'm sorry, but anyone with a lot of muscles who wears small and medium-sized shirts every day probably has an ego. I'm pretty sure that if you were really this person who would never be vain, you wouldn't be wearing tight t-shirts to show off all your biceps and triceps and all that crap. So yeah, that whole he doesn't have an ego is BS, because he's already displaying one in his videos. Now, I've given you several examples of him having an ego, like how he said, you know, I'm going to be playing games for you because you'll be tucked away at home, or how he says people are counting on him and then abandoning them when they actually need him. So if you're dumb enough to only focus on this example of the clothes and the t-shirts thing and attack me for it, you can't be helped, and your existence is honestly embarrassing. And with that being said, this video is over. I'm gonna end it right here because there's no good place to end it, honestly, and I need to put the rest in part 2. So you'll find out why everyone's so mad then, because I have so much more to say about this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.